Good morning, Jaime.
Hey, good morning, Shadab.
Hello, everyone.
It's been good. Been a world traveler. Just got back from London, so still getting used to East Coast timing again.
Must have been a great trip, actually. You know, I I actually love to travel as well, and London was actually one of the city that I went a few times, and I really loved it. A lot of history there.
Yeah, I do like London. I've been there a bunch of times as well. There's always something to pick up, whether it's local culture, great restaurant, or just walking around the city and discovering new things. So I stayed in the West End this time and got to experience I'll call it direct city life. But what was interesting about the trip, we also kind of went more into the countryside for second part of it. So you sort of got both sides of what is London, the city life, and then a little bit more on the outskirts. So anyway, we actually did some AI stuff. So it was a good trip overall.
Good, good. Mix of everything there. Okay, awesome. So, Jimmy, while you were busy in that week, lots of things happened. Including ChatGPT actually came out with a few updates, including the new browser, ChatGPT Atlas, and also ChatGPT at work. So we'll talk about that with those.
Yeah, and yeah, I was saying across the pond, the news doesn't stop over there too. So I was keeping abreast of what was going on, and there's a lot of updates. Some of it from OpenAI with Sora 2 that came out, Google with their Vibe Coding AI Studio, some announcements and basically launches and releases there, which we'll get into. And not to be outdone, Microsoft put out some new updates with Copilot. So we'll go through all those things and more as we get into this episode of the AI Files.
Stay tuned for a quick introduction. Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jaime Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
Okay, great. So, Jimmy, let's start this week with, I would say, war of the words that happened, really. So, this actually started with one of the co-founder at Anthropic, Jack Clark. He published an essay which was titled as Technological Optimism and Appropriate Fear, in which he argued that AI is a real and mysterious creature, somewhat unpredictable. Basically, he wrote this essay and then he talked about, like some of his childhood fear about, how when you turn off the light and all the things in the room, they turn into different shapes, right? In the darkness. And then he start to fear them, but then he will turn it on and then he'll realize, oh, it's just a pile of books or a pile of clothes, etc. And then he say that this is exactly where we are right now in the world of AI, that, it all looks like that. So we need to basically turn on the light and see what these things are really for. But he also said that, that a lot of people actually spend a lot of time trying to convince you that, well, it's all just machine and a tool. It's nothing more than that. But he says that AI is actually real and mysterious creature, somewhat unpredictable. So you cannot just simply say that it's just a tool and machine. It can do some harm and things like that. So that was the gist of the essay. And then what happened was that David Sachs, who is the White House AI and crypto czar, he accused Anthropic of engaging in a sophisticated regulatory capture strategy based on fear mongering. He claimed that Anthropic is intentionally stoking AI risk fear so as to push regulations that benefit the company and potentially disadvantage competition. Now, with a little bit context there, right? We know that Anthropic is actually particularly known for, and this is why most of the team that came out of the OpenAI, they split from the OpenAI, and because of they wanted to be a bit more, they wanted to create the AI which is more safe. They want to have some guardrail. They want to even have a limit to which they will develop the AI. They will not go beyond that, things like that. So it's basically, it is in their DNA, it is in their formation, and they keep talking about it. In fact, they often go, I would say, out of league from all the other peers and competition and support some of the regulations which nobody else, no other AI company is supporting. The example being the California regulations. So, that's why Anthropic is known for that one. And what David Sachs is referring to is that, okay, you are trying to make that as a business model. You're trying to create these fear mongering so that you are making that as a business model itself. And that was back and forth going on. And then a lot of leaders actually started stepping in, some of them in support, some of them in opposition to Anthropic, etc. And then Dario Amodei, he actually responded with a statement defending the company's approach. He stressed that Anthropic is committed to making AI beneficial, and it supports a federal unified approach to AI regulation rather than chaotic state by state rules. One of the things that is also happening is, Jamie, that because um, in the current regime, a report has come out saying that the federal AI regulation has actually stalled, and states are stepping in. So far, 38 states have enacted more than 100 AI laws in the first half of 2025. Now, that's also creating some sort of chaos, because now every state, it becomes really hard for the companies to follow different state level regulations rather than a federal level regulations.
Yeah.
In fact, the UK government, while you were there, they also actually unveiled a new regulatory blueprint aimed at spurring AI innovation by allowing new AI products to be tested under relaxed rules. Essentially, in fact, they're trying to reduce some of those regulatory hassle, etc. So this tussle is going on back and forth, and it's always a debate about how much you push on the AI regulation, where is the balance, and this, I think, will continue. This will never get resolved.
Yeah. So the one thing that I take on all of this, whether or not you want to think of it as funny or not, we get to see how the sausage is being made. And let me explain that a little bit. We would never see these dialogues if it wasn't in the day and age that we're in now. These would typically be conversations behind closed doors. So we're actually kind of seeing arguments in real time across, obviously in this industry, but in other industries as well. So we're seeing things that we necessarily wouldn't have seen. So that being said, if we look back at the history of Anthropic, they make models, but the core thing with Anthropic is around alignment, quote unquote, what this means for a model and society. How do they have tighter or more stringent security rules within their system itself? That's what Anthropic is known for. So, like the claims that Jack or Dario are making are not, at least to me, unfamiliar territory. These are things that they've always been touting. Now, do I think that they're jumping on maybe a bandwagon for where things are within the government today, and maybe stoking that fire? Possibly. I wouldn't put it past any company to do things in that regard, but I go back to what its model is, or at least the model as a company. So they're still talking about the things that they've always talked about as far as what's core to their principles. We're just seeing it play out on a stage that we typically wouldn't see before. Now, that being said, I think the bigger story here is about where the government, at least the U.S. government, is, because I do remember there was supposed to be some overhauls at a federal level, but that's somewhat stalled out. So we have states enacting things, which I think, in my opinion, is going to be detrimental, because you've got some states doing very hardened rules and some that don't, and it's a little bit more relaxed. Maybe that's fair competition. We'll see maybe startups or some of the innovation foundational labs maybe move to those states that are less stringent. But, to me, we should have one common platform, one set of rules that apply to everybody. But that's just me.
Totally agree, Jamie.
Yeah. So anyway, with that, let's get into some rapid fire news. So Sora 2 Certainly, that's been making the rounds in the news out there. They just rolled out an update to Sora 2. Most of it is within the storyboard mode, which is in beta, and it basically lets you build video frames or videos by frame, and an editable storyboard that you can define via text prompts. Now, that in and of itself is cool, but what they also pushed out for everybody is making longer video clips. So we can now create Sora 2 video clips up to 15 seconds long. And pro users, if you're paying that $200 a month, can actually stretch that out to 25 seconds only through the web. So these longer videos do count towards your daily limits. And again, depending on where you are, pro or not, there's limits that you can create videos. So just keep that in mind as you start to create your videos through Sora 2. You might be chewing through your credits more than what you thought. But by the way, this is also rolling out gradually, so not everyone will have it right now. I've been checking mine and I don't have it yet. I'm assuming it'll obviously go to pro users first and then trickle down from there.
And by the way, Netflix goes all in on Gen AI as the entertainment industry remains divided. And Netflix is generally a bellwether of a sort. They often actually takes a lead and try new things. So no wonder. I think they were expected to do this, but they have actually started using for some of the scenes. For example, in one of the series, they actually used Gen AI to generate the scene of a building collapsing, for example, or in some other situations as well. And they're looking at it as a tool. They're not looking at it as a to replace everything else with just Gen AI, but they're looking at it as a tool to create some specific effect, just like VFX. For example, in one of the scene, they used the Gen AI to make the actors look younger, right? To bring that effect of a younger actors in the childhood. I mean, in my view, Gen AI in that regard is no more than a VFX, to be honest. So,
Yep. Yeah, I think that it'll be more prevalent with various different studios. Like, how do they slipstream AI generated content into existing productions? I mean, they've been using AI tools, for graphics design for a while, but not necessarily full frame or full video clip generation. So I think it's inevitable. Anyway, speaking of inevitable, developer tools are certainly changing. So Anthropic expands its Claude Code, which again was and still is a development platform by Anthropic. It was mostly CLI or quote unquote the ability to incorporate Claude Code into different IDEs. Well, now what they've got or what they've released is a web app for Claude Code, and the intent here is to make it more available to different developers without having an entryway that's a little bit more deterring. So this makes it easy, bottom line. So what is really important about this is that developers can actually spin up autonomous coding agents directly within the browser, which again makes the development of any app that you're building much easier by using these coding agents. So go to the nearest browser near you and spin up Claude Code by Anthropic. So let's get into a few other launch information, or launch news articles here. So Google, we went through Google's vibe coding tool. I think it was maybe 2 episodes ago. And what they've done is actually update that to bring that directly into Google's AI Studio. So this is now incorporated within the Build tab, and you vibe code with it. So the intent around this one, and I've used it, shown it in its previous incarnation, is that I could just describe an app in any idea that I want in plain language. This is, a route where we're seeing how AI can make everybody a developer. And not that they're going to be developing, quote unquote, like the next SAP or anything like that, but it's about creating these simplistic applications that will help me in my day-to-day life, or the things that I'm interested in, which could be weather-related things, or maybe it's something to track, and this is my next idea, by the way, to track objects that I have cataloged within deep space within my astrophotography hobby. So it's all about how do we make the casual user a developer, this is the way that they're doing it. So it is very simplistic. Key features in this, the vibe coding capability is an interactive editor with live preview. So as you're, banging out the things that you actually want to see that's in your head, you actually get live preview of the application as you're going through each step. The model selector, obviously, there's a large language model underneath it to take your thoughts and create code. It defaults to Gemini 2.5 Pro, but that can be changed as well. You've got one-click deployment, so I could deploy this to Google Cloud or deploy it to GitHub as a repository. You could also have I'm feeling lucky button, which creates general randomized applications. So I don't know why you would want to do that, but it's there. So the real goal of what Google is doing is to democratize the AI or app creation via the use of artificial intelligence. And like I said, it's pretty good. I mean, yeah, I look at Cursor or Visual Studio and having the AI agents. That's great. I use it. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a hardcore developer, but that's going to be a very different experience than a casual user who just wants to be like, hey, I want to create this little application. This is a great tool to be able to do that.
So now let's move to another launch from OpenAI, which is ChatGPT Atlas. And this is a browser that we all have been anticipating for a long time. And now it's finally here. This is basically a new web browser, and ChatGPT is the core of this browser. And you can say that browser has been built around the ChatGPT in this case. And there are many features about it. And however, I would say it's not a complete novelty because we have already seen these kind of browser. Perplexity actually launched famously that the browser, the comment, and then we also have seen the Copilot mode in the browser as well. But this is now from the OpenAI, and this one has several features. For example, embedded ChatGPT, right? It works in the browser window without switching tabs or copying content. So you can just simply have a sidebar, and you can do all and it will work across the tabs. You don't need to switch and then provide the context. For example, it can also retain the memories. So it has something called browser memories. It is an optional feature which you have to opt in to remember the context from sites you visit to improve the responses and suggestions. And user can control this. There is an agent mode as well. So ChatGPT can perform tasks in your browser like research, booking, compiling, and all that. It's basically using that click and point kind of features. And again, users can completely control it. There are still certain sensitive actions that it will not do. For example, actually buying the transaction or actually making the purchase, but it can do everything else. And there are privacy and controls as well. Users can clear history, toggle visibility, and remember some of the settings that you set up in the Chat GPT can also transfer within the browser. For example, if you have memories enabled, you can actually transfer those settings, but you can also turn them off. By default, if you have, let's say, for example, enabled that you allow your chat history to be used for the training in the Chat GPT, you can also allow that in the browsing history as well, but you can turn it off. There are some parental controls as well, including options to disable browser memories and agent mode. And of course, you can still do the incognito windows, right? So you can just turn off everything and then go in incognito, and there's no tracing. It's available worldwide on Mac OS for free, Plus, Pro, and Go users. It is better for business and enterprise and education customer if it is enabled by the admin. And then the Windows, iOS, and Android versions are coming soon as well.
Yeah, that was the one part where I was bummed out when I first saw this. I'm like, I can't wait to go grab it and download it. And I'm like, oh wait, it's only available on the Mac right now. So waiting with bated breath for the Windows version.
Yeah, and that's a question I would ask Jamie. That would you download that right away or would you wait? Because I'm like debating, and the reason being,
I would
yeah,
download it right away. I mean, I I test things probably way earlier than I should, but yeah, I would jump on it as soon as it's out there.
Okay, and the reason is that, you know, there are certain, I would say, reports coming out, not just about the ChatGPT Atlas, but also in general about the AI browser, including the Perplexity, for example. Because what is happening is that just people need to be just mindful that some of these browsers are susceptible, right? For
Yeah.
example, the websites that you browse, the websites are actually trying to like inject the prompt, right? A text, for example, because these ChatGPT and the Perplexity will read from those websites, and those websites can actually inject the prompt. So the world is evolving around us. The browser brings certain amount of vulnerability um, that exposes. Um, so people need to be just careful about that.
Yeah, let me refine my statement. I would download it right away, but I would do it within an isolated VM, because you don't know what's happening just yet. And
Correct.
I think I did see a report that was it the Perplexity comment model, or was it
Yeah,
OpenAI that something got either hacked or stolen or something that to that regard.
correct. And there are, I think it was about the comment. And there are safety measures. For example, agent mode cannot run code, download files, or access other apps within this ChatGPT Atlas. It also includes safeguards against malicious instructions and sensitive side actions, like something exactly what we were referring to. But still, people need to be careful and make the decisions sensibly. Um, so yeah, that was one of the main news that came out this week, Jimmy.
Yeah. So what's interesting, it seems like everybody is jumping on this AI browser bandwagon. So, we had Perplexity with Comment. Now we've got GPT Atlas. So Microsoft isn't that far behind. I would actually say Microsoft might have been first if you want to think about what was initially launched back in July with Copilot. But basically, Microsoft has now repackaged and updated its AI browser capability, which is Copilot inside of Edge. So, what this latest update, and by the way, this was just brought out 3 days ago, October 26th. So, depending on when you're listening to this, um, so what this brings as far as key capabilities is a Copilot mode, which basically acts as an intelligent companion that you use inside of Edge. So the ability to reason over your open tabs, obviously doing things like summarize and compare that information across that data, being able to perform actions directly. So like booking a flight. I think everybody these days uses like a cooking recipe. So, it could go out and search those things, fill out forms. There's new features, though, however, that are within this updated Copilot inside of Edge. One of them is actions. So the ability to automate these tasks, filling out forms or booking a hotel or update my shopping list because I want to make the best filet mignon that I can and I need whatever ingredients. So these are things that the Copilot browser or inside of Edge can do in terms of actions. It could also do what it's calling journeys. So the ability to trace connections between open tabs, and the whole intent of that is, all right, well, if I'm looking up a cooking, and again, I'll use that one, or maybe I'll use the vacation. So if I have one tab that's looking at airlines, another tab looking at car rentals, another tab looking at hotels, which I often do when I got making a journey, it's going to tie those, no pun intended with journey, but it's going to tie those different tabs that I have. And it's like, oh, Jamie's trying to go to, Jamaica and going to Sandals and, needs an airline. So it'll connect all those dots together. So the launch, as I mentioned, this was just announced this past week. It's rolling out. This is on top of the basic features that were introduced in the summertime, like a search bar and voice navigation. But what I kind of want to stress, and I think this is the bigger piece of this puzzle for me, is we're starting to see all of these organizations, whether or not it's Microsoft or OpenAI or Perplexity, they're building these AI-based browsers, and I think this is. I'm not going to say it's going to be the only area of focus over the next couple months, but it is a big one. It's about how do these companies organize the capabilities around what they've already constructed as far as AI and add that to things like operator and computer use, but then make it into an environment that we all use every day, which is the browser. So the browser almost then becomes this AI operating system that we all will, number one, we are using, and two, where it's just getting enhanced by the capabilities that these organizations are actually developing. Just a quick little dichotomy here. The differences, at least between the Microsoft Copilot inside of Edge versus OpenAI's GPT Atlas, is the way that they drive the analysis. So Copilot uses this tab inferencing for sort of like the ride along, but Atlas uses split screens to kind of see that. So it's just a different way, but they're still doing the same thing. They're trying to get context aware of what you're looking at. And then there's visual differences. The visual differences are relatively minor when you compare the two, but it's the distinction really lies within the underlying models. And we've talked about this several times over. Is there a split coming between Microsoft and OpenAI? Who knows? But what is definitely true is that Microsoft is not just relying on the OpenAI models anymore, and that's true and evident when you look at things that are coming out with Copilot, or Copilot inside of Edge, or even some of the other Copilot agents that are being developed and pushed out by Microsoft. So anyway, that's another glimpse into the now changing AI-based browser wars.
Yeah, and it's just a quick reminder that ultimately all these browsers, including of course Chrome and Edge and even the ChatGPT Atlas, they're all ultimately based on Chromium, right?
Yep.
So the open source framework from what Google had created long ago. Um, all right, so let's move on to the another launch that happened also, Jamie, this week, which is a minor launch from OpenAI. It is called Company Knowledge in ChatGPT. Company Knowledge is essentially a connection to the internal tools. So let's say in your enterprise and corporate, you're using Slack, SharePoint, Google Drive, GitHub, HubSpot, whatnot, right? I mean, there are several of these applications, and an enterprise may not be using all of them together in one particular enterprise, but some of them. So this feature, Company Knowledge, allows people to actually connect to those apps in their enterprise with the proper access and privilege, of course. And then the GPT-5 model, there is a fine-tuned version of that, which is specialized for Company Knowledge. It can pull the context from all those multiple sources with clear citations for trust and transparency. And you can, because often the enterprise knowledge is not just sitting in one place, right? Sometime it is reflecting in, and bits and pieces are reflecting in all these different sources. So allowing the ChatGPT enterprise and the business customer to get a holistic view across all these sources. You can do, for example, you can create the client briefings or summarize the goals or report on feedback and plan the releases. You can, for example, and all of this comes with the enterprise grade security, of course, encryption and IP allow listing and compliance and all those kind of things. So this is, I think, they already allow the files and other thing, but this is specifically targeted for, and it is available only for the ChatGPT business, enterprise, and education customers. So essentially, you use the enterprise knowledge now for your interaction, and something which Copilot, right? Microsoft Copilot is extremely good at, and that's their real strength in, by using the enterprise knowledge. I would say Copilot is miles ahead when it comes to that, because it can connect to so many different sources and fabric integration that happens between Copilot. But I think ChatGPT Enterprise is actually gaining ground. They are actually gaining a ground in a lot of enterprises, and I think this is a good new feature for them.
Yeah, and I was going to say, it's all about the data. It comes back to that. It truly is. And I obviously speak to a lot of organizations, and AI is only as good as the things that you're going to be putting into it, garbage in, garbage out. And it relates back to what are you able to tie into. So this whole notion of being able to tie into company knowledge is super important. And OpenAI is just making it easier for companies to do just that. So this is, in my opinion, step in the right direction for providing ground truth to the things that these models are actually producing and making it easier for organizations or businesses to do that. All right. So speaking of businesses, Microsoft, we were talking about Copilot inside of Edge, but they also put out a fall release update. And what's interesting is how they're tagging this. It's being tagged around human-centered AI. And what that really means is putting the me, you, anybody, a human, in the center of what's actually happening around the use of artificial intelligence. So this fall release really revolves around making AI a personal companion, and not replacing humans in that loop, or not replacing it as human judgment via the use of AI. So there are a couple of very interesting capabilities in this release. One of them is called groups, and this is a real-time collaboration with up to 32 different people. And let me just kind of point out the significance of the group feature. So whenever we've been using AI in terms of like generative AI up to this point, it's you as an individual working with something like Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini, but it's a one-to-one interaction, you to the AI model. Yes, I can like quote unquote download and put it into a Google Docs or a Microsoft Word doc, or quote unquote a page, and send that off to somebody, but they're still getting the after effects, if you will, of that AI interaction with you. What if you're able to put those people directly in that interaction phase? And that's what groups is. So it's allowing real-time collaboration with that single AI chat, and the agents that you can interconnect. And at least with groups as of today, you can do that group interaction with up to 32 or 31 other people. You're one of them, so that would be the 32. So I think this is going to change the way that we potentially interact with agents and with just AI, and make it more of a I was going to say like a HubSpot, or a just a way that multiple people can work together. All right, so that was one feature. Another one that was put out was Imagine. So this is an update to their capabilities around image generation. This one has the ability to do remixing and share AI generated content. This one was less earth shattering to me, but more or less, hey, yeah, everyone's kind of got this feature out today. Another big thing with this fall release is memory and personalization. So the ability to have longer term recall over your user context, which is important and interesting, especially now as we bring groups in, the ability to recall a lot more context. I kind of relate back, context is king, because without that, these things just create words, right? So being able to provide that. There's also additional connectors. And again, we see this now with all these different players, is that they're playing nice together, which is good, because if I've got my information in Gmail, or if it's in, a Google Drive versus, let's say, OneDrive, I want that to be accessible. Kind of goes back to what we said before about, the GPT or OpenAI knowledge. This is the same kind of idea. So the ability to connect. Now I'll save the last for least, whether or not you think this is important or not. I don't know if everybody remembers Clippy, but Clippy was something in the Microsoft Office tool set circa a few years ago. So what actually is out there now is something called Mika. So Mika, or Myco, however you pronounce it, Myco, I guess. This is the new symbol. So this little dude or dudette, whatever it is, I'll just call it non-binary at this point, is the new companion. I don't know if this is really gonna catch on, but we'll see. It kind of reminds me of one of those abstract things that you see in the Olympics, whatever that last one was. But this is Miko, however you pronounce it. meet your new AI companion. I have heard, I have not tried it yet, but there are some prompts that I could use, and Michael will turn into Clippy.
Ah,
So I got to find that hack and find out actually how to do it. But yes, meet Michael.
I definitely miss Clippy, and it was a very popular. I would say, kind of. Some people found it very annoying. It was, and the other people, and it wasn't. I would say too much useful, but it was definitely a pleasant presence. I would say on the screen. It was. I would say entertaining, and
Yeah. So
would love to see what Michael can do.
yeah, what I was going to say, and this is probably rooted in some kind of psychological piece,
Mm.
because if you're talking, because I do talk with my AI, I do it with OpenAI a lot. People might think I'm crazy while I'm walking the dog, but I actually give instructions and get that back. I think if you see a form, I'm not going to call it a physical form, but if you see some entity instead of the thing just talking to you, you might get better connection with that thing. So I'm assuming that's probably one of the reasons why. And again, I'm definitely not a psychologist, but there's got to be something there that, instead of just talking to a blank screen, you're actually talking to something that has somewhat of a physical form. Anyway, that'll be
Totally.
interesting to go psychoanalyze, but that's at least in the back of my head why.
Totally, and it helps a lot with the branding, right? I think.
Yeah.
All right. I think we will leave you with one last thing, a quick trivia, and this came out from a report by Alloy, where they've actually revealed that 85% of Americans fear AI-powered scams, and 66% saying they favor banks that deploy advanced AI protections. And no surprise, because 1 in 4 people have actually lost the money to, like some sort of a financial loss to these kind of scams. And of course, AI is as a tool being used by these scamsters, and this is a big business. Unfortunately, they're using these tools to actually ramp up their attacks, and that's why people, no wonder, also want their banks and financial institutions to protect them and make sure that they provide some sort of a advanced AI protections against these kind of hacks.
Yeah, that's it's true, and unfortunately, it's prevalent. I mean, there's whenever new technology comes out, I will guarantee that the bad actors are going to be using that technology probably as fast, if not faster, than good law-abiding companies. So these telephone scams have been out obviously since the telephone was probably invented, which then upped its game into email scams. I've got a dead relative somewhere, and they left you $10 million. You just have to provide a credit card first. That's been around. But I think what's driving this fear from Americans is, and I think it's worldwide, to be honest, but it's AI being able to create voice identical sounding clips, and it might
Yeah.
be of your grandmother or your grandson, whatever it is. Or now with things like Sora, um, granted it doesn't allow you to use face right now, but there are plenty of models where I can start out with a face of somebody and then a line of voice to it. So it's very easy to kind of create videos or sound clips of somebody and they might be asking for money. So yeah, this is definitely something which is real, and the banks and those financial institutions have been, and I'm sure they'll keep on updating the way that they protect individuals from themselves and the things that they do in terms of scams and or at least being able to pick up. So anyway, yeah, I totally agree with this report for sure.
Okay, great. All right. I think that's it for this week, Jimmy, and everyone. Enjoy and have a great rest of the week.
Yep. Stay safe. See ya.
Bye, everyone.